Hey guys, this is Justin at the Survivor Review, and on the last video Sam and I did, we discussed the slasher sequel, Halloween 2. So today we're going to be talking about that movie again, but this time, the infamous TV cuts. Now why am I talking about an edited for TV version of a slasher movie? Because there's a lot more to this than what you'd expect. There's deleted scenes, alternate footage, strange re-edits, reordering of scenes, a lot of things that basically turns this version into a legit alternate cut of Halloween 2 and definitely makes it worth talking about. Now I actually have a history with this version because when I was a kid I wasn't allowed to watch R-rated movies, but I was allowed to watch them on TV because they were edited for content. So my parents were okay with that. And this one franchise that I'd always wanted to watch was Halloween. I don't know why, that was the one that just intrigued me the most. And when they finally allowed me to, I did, and that was 2006, I believe, on AMC's Monster Fest, back when it was Monster Fest, not Fear Fest. And AMC that year showed Halloween 1 through 5 and Resurrection. So I got to see 6 out of the 8 movies that were around at that time, and that was when I just fell in love with this franchise. I taped the movies off of TV every time they were on, and I just rewatched those tapes over and over for the next, year or two until I was actually able to watch the R-rated versions, and I literally rewatched those tapes so many times, and the version of Halloween 2 was the TV cuts. So for the longest time, that was my version of Halloween 2. And when I first saw the theatrical cut, I was just shocked and confused because there was so much different stuff. So much was cut out, so much was just changed. To the point where there's still times when I rewatch Halloween 2, and there's scenes that were cut out of the TV version that to me feel like they're not supposed to be there because they weren't in the TV cuts. I'm so accustomed to that. And there's even scenes in the TV cuts that were deleted scenes that they added back in that I still feel like are actual scenes in the movie, and I have to remind myself that those are actually cut out and not in the theatrical cut of the film. So I have a lot of nostalgia for this edit, and I love that Scream Factory released it as a bonus disc on their Halloween 2 Blu-ray, because I always love just popping in the TV cut every once in a while. So this TV cut, it has its fair shares of typical edits, cutting around the nudity and cutting out the violence and really hilarious dubbing for certain lines.
10-4, unit calling, identify suspect.
Michael Myers, just get yourself over here.
Every other word you say is either hell or damn.
Sorry. I guess I just foul up all the time.
And that stuff's just fun. To me, it's always entertaining to see how they edit around the R-rated content. But right off the bat, the movie already starts out differently, because the movie opens with the opening credits. Which, in the theatrical cut, it opens with, the prologue, which is the ending scene of Halloween 1, and then it leads right into the opening credits. But this time it just starts off with the credits, and then after that it goes into the ending of Halloween 1. So that's already kind of different, and that leads to some really awkward changes afterwards. Because first off, you lose one of the best lines in the entire movie, which is after Loomis runs outside and sees that Michael is gone, and the neighbor comes up. It's just like, this is a Halloween joke, I've been trick-or-treated to death tonight. And Loomis just goes,
You don't know what death is.
They cut out all that neighbor's lines. He just goes, is this a joke? And then Loomis runs away.
Tell him he's still on the loose.
Was that a Halloween joke?
But then he runs away, and the Halloween theme kicks in, because it's supposed to lead into the opening credits, and then it just fades out, and goes to the next scene. Which even then, the next scene is different. Because after the opening credits in the theatrical cut, it cuts to the point of view shot of Michael Myers walking through the yard, and then you see him get the knife from the L-rods, and then he kills that one teenager, and then he moves on, and then it cuts to ambulance and police and everything going to the house where Laurie Strode is and picking her up. We don't get any of that stuff with Michael yet. They save that for later, and they cut immediately to the house and Laurie being picked up and being taken to the hospital. And when it cuts to Michael, his point of view walking through the yard, it still has the music from the opening credits playing, kind of fading out. So it just awkwardly cuts the music already in progress, fading out. It's so lazy, it's so weird. But this part's interesting. This is where some of the weird-ass edits come in. In the theatrical version, he pops in, he takes the knife, and walks away, and she turns back, feels the blood on the cutting board, and screams. Well, in the TV version, it seems like they couldn't show like any drop of blood at all. And so how they work around that is there's no shots of him taking the knife. And basically he pops in, and then Miss Elrod turns.
Stop it! You're ignorant.
Yeah, try to make sense of that. It makes no sense and confused the hell out of me as a kid. I was like, so he just walked up there, scared her, and walked away? Like, what did he accomplish with that? That's just like one of the bizarre edits in this movie that is so nonsensical and weird, but it's just so memorable. And then one of the things I actually kind of like, an interesting change, is that, you know, he walks by the teenager's house who's on the phone, stuff like that, and in the TV version he just walks away, he doesn't kill her. Which, in the theatrical cut, that scene of him popping up and killing that teenager always felt just kind of weird and kind of random, and just kind of thrown in because they wanted to have a death early on in the movie, and none of the deaths really happened until a little bit in. That's what it felt like. So cutting that out, I actually thought was kind of a good choice in a way. There's also other weird like rearrangements of scenes in that like it just has all the Loomis stuff happen at once and just right after another. Like it has, you know, he's told to go at Sims Grove, he leaves in the car, he finds out about Laurie Strode, and then turns away. And then all that stuff with the hospital happens afterwards. It's kind of interesting though, because as things move differently, and like, it doesn't quite work because you have that awkward gap where it's like, you know, Loomis is like, oh, let's go back, and then they turn back, and then you don't see Loomis for like a little stretch of time until like during the ending of the movie. So I feel like it doesn't quite work as well. You have that weird dream sequence with Laurie and like her as a kid visiting Michael Myers. And that dream sequence is also weird because they dub in like a little girl's voice talking over it, and it just doesn't sound right. It doesn't feel like it fits, and it's so random.
Michael, please don't be angry with me. I'm your sister. Please don't be angry with me.
But there's also other weird edits. Like there's the scene where the security guard is like checking around the place. And the scene in the theatrical version is just slow. It's kind of, it's building tension. He's kind of looking around. He's just kind of looking through closets. And then after looking through one closet, he turns the door and Michael's there, just smashes him with a hammer. Really well done, you know, really good scene. But the TV version adds all this music, all this suspenseful music. And adds in shots of Michael Myers like approaching him, like him going downstairs, him slowly getting there until he turns the door and then boom, murder. And it's kind of weird. Like I like the theatrical version better because it kind of just slowly builds it up and doesn't just tell you what's gonna happen. But I don't know like what the actual decision was to do that. I'm thinking maybe because like the actual shot of like Michael like killing him is so quick without the close-up of the hammer hitting the head that they needed something else to make the scene exciting, maybe? But it's just another random edit in the movie that legit changes the tone of the scene and gives it a different feeling to it than you get in the theatrical cuts. And then we get to the deleted scenes, which there's a fair amount of them in this version, and a lot of them were actually really good. There's a lot of character building moments with the staff from the hospital, which is something that the theatrical cut was lacking. A lot of the characters are just kind of bland and just kind of there. There's a lot more stuff in here that gives them a bit more personality, a bit more character. Although not all of them are really necessary. You can tell that a lot of them are cut out just for pacing. You know, a lot of them are just kind of dialogue stuff, and like, I don't know how many times we need to see Jimmy like sneaking into Laurie's room, but there's a fair amount of that in this version. There's a handful of scenes in here that really work and I feel should have been left in. Well, there's one really important one. Like, you get a lot more stuff with Laurie Strode in this movie, which is nice. She still doesn't do anything in this cut. She's still stuck in a hospital bed the entire movie, but there's still like more with her, which is nice. It's a really good scene where Jimmy comes in to talk to Laurie and tells her like, oh, Michael Myers is dead. It's all over the news. You know, they killed him. And she just starts freaking out. She's like, no, he's not dead. You can't kill him. She's just freaking out. The doctor is running in. The nurses are already trying to like hold her down. And then the like crucial thing that helps make some stuff in the theatrical version make a lot of sense, the power goes out. And then the emergency lights go on. Which explains why in the theatrical cut, all of a sudden, like in the middle of the movie, the hospital is just like dark as hell, and it looks like it's like just a closed down building when it's a hospital. It's supposed to be open, you know, all night. That explains stuff. I feel like that scene definitely should have stayed in, because it just makes a lot of sense and explains like why the hospital is so dark for the rest of the movie. But it's also a really interesting scene with Laurie. There's more stuff with her which I like. There's a lot of extra little bits here and there. There's a little bit that I keep thinking, this is the one scene that I keep thinking is part of the theatrical cut, but it's actually not. There's a moment early on where like Jimmy's like, oh, you want me to bring you a Coke? And then later on in this new scene, he actually does bring her the Coke. Nice little moments. There's also another really good delayed scene where you have these two nurses that are discussing like what's going on, and one of them just kind of starts freaking out, and you can tell she's just getting really nervous, and this whole thing is getting very unsettling. And I like that scene a lot because it just really shows these people reacting to what's going on. And I like that scene. I thought that was a really good character moment. Also, you get a couple more scenes with Dr. Mixter, the drunk doctor, including one funny moment where it's like after they kind of stitched up Lori, he's just sitting there just like, oh, I think I stitched it right. I think I did all right. Which I just love it because I just love the random drunk doctor. But also you get more scenes with him. He has that one scene in the theatrical cut and then he just disappears until they find his dead body later on. So I think most of these deleted scenes actually help the movie and actually add more to them. Now we get to one of the strangest edits in this version, in that they basically create a whole new arc for the Jimmy character at the end of the movie, and not by like filming new scenes specifically for the TV version, like they did for the TV version of the original, but just by like cutting stuff out and then taking that footage and repurposing it later in the movie. It's so bizarre. So the way his character goes in the theatrical cut is after Laurie becomes catatonic, he goes to look for the doctor, and he ends up finding Miss Alves like dead inside that one room with like her blood drained and everything. Really creepy scene. And he goes to like run away, and he slips on the blood and smashes his head on the floor. And then later on, when Laurie's hiding in the car outside, he pops in. He tries to start the car, and he thinks he's gonna like save the day, but instead he just kind of passes right out. Presumably dead, because you never see him again in the movie after that point, so it's presumed dead, although there's no real confirmation. Well, in the TV version, it happens a lot differently here. So in the TV edit, he runs to go get the doctor, and it just shows him just kind of like running around, like kind of looking, you know, for somebody. And then it just cuts away. That's it, you know, he doesn't find Mrs. Alves or anything. And then later on, when Laurie's hiding in the car, he doesn't, you know, come in to like drive off and pass out. There's none of that. That's all gone. And then during the climax, when it's Loomis, Michael, and Laurie in the one room, during all that action, it keeps cutting to shots of Jimmy just kind of walking around, just looking around. And I try to edit it like he's reacting to what's going on. Like you hear a couple gunshots go off, and it cuts to a shot of him just like, and then like he runs that way. So I try to make it look like he's reacting to that. And then right at the end, the moment that confused me the most as a kid watching this TV version, it's the epic moment, everything's building up, Loomis lights the lighter.
It's time, Michael.
Indicating that like the explosion made him fall, and even though there's a giant pool of blood there, that I don't know why that's there, and that always confused me as a kid watching this. I'm like, where did that blood come from? Did he hit his head and like, does it spurt blood? Like, what happened? Like, it made no sense to me as a kid. It just doesn't make sense in general. But that's what they try to do. They try to involve Jimmy in the climax of the movie, which is so weird. And then it gets a payoff because there's an alternate ending in this cut. In the original ending, you just have Laurie getting into the ambulance and then just drives off. Well, in this one, she's in the ambulance, a sheet pops up, and the sheet falls over, and it's Jimmy. And they hold hands, and they drive off happily.
We made it.
So yeah, they basically created a whole new arc for Jimmy in this cut, and it's so weird that they did that. There's also some interesting edits. There's a scene where they're looking at the charred body of Ben Tramer, and they show the shot really briefly of the charred body, but they couldn't show it too much more after that. So every time there's like a wide shot in the theatrical cut of them talking and you see the body just sitting there, they actually use alternate takes of close-ups of the actors saying their dialogue.
We haven't got ours. Listen to me, we've got to assume that Michael Myers is still alive. We haven't got ours. Listen to me, I think you must assume that Michael Myers is still alive.
And I noticed that while watching this because I feel like the takes of Loomis from the close-ups, his line readings aren't as good, at least compared to like the wide shots in the theatrical cut. And there's also an alternate death scene for the cop at the end. In the theatrical cut, he gets his throat slit. In this one, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Basically, like Michael like picks him up and then turns him around and assumingly stabs him behind the back. I think that's what it looks like, because you see like the blood, you know, dripping out of him really quickly, really briefly, because they can't show blood in this version. And it's just a weird edit. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And there's also a lot of like weird extra shots they cut to. Like there's the whole death scene in the hot tub, basically. The scene where like, you know, like Michael puts his arms on her shoulder, and there's an awkward like close-up of Michael that they cut to, like right before he kills her, that just looks like it was an outtake.
Now, Bud, don't be that way.
And it just looks like they were just scraping through the bottom of the barrel to find whatever shot they could to fit in there to get rid of, to like cut away from something. And they just found that one outtake and just placed it in there real quick. Because that's what that shot looks like. It just totally doesn't belong there. And interesting enough, with all the death scenes kind of trimmed down in this version, it makes it closer to Rick Rosenthal's original like version of the movie, since Jack Carpenter is the one that went in and reshot and added all those extra death scenes to make it gorier. So his version is actually kind of closer to like the original director's visions. Like a lot of the edits in this movie just kind of makes this movie a mess and makes a lot of things not make sense and adds a lot more plot holes to it, because by cutting out the entire scene where the nurse finds Dr. Mixer and gets killed, the scene where they discover Mrs. Alves' body, that's literally 3 characters right there that just flat out disappear from the movie and are never seen again, and they're just like, that's it, they're gone.
What's the count?
Don't know yet. For sure.
So that makes no sense. That's a giant plot hole. And so there's a lot of edits in this movie that just don't make any sense. That added on to the weird new edits that they put in there that didn't make any sense. So overall, the TV cut, I definitely recommend checking out just for the hell of it, because it's just so fun to watch. It is cool to see these deleted scenes, but there is like an option on the Scream Factory Blu-ray to watch the deleted scenes separately. So if you're just interested in that, you can watch those there, which is nice. I'm glad that they have that option. But just for an overall experience, this is just a fun edit because it's so bizarre. So many weird choices, so many scenes in the movie rearranged and just cut out completely, and it's something that's definitely worth checking out. It's definitely enjoyable. I have a lot of nostalgia for it. I love watching it every once in a while, especially because it's in like the 4:3 full screen, you know, horribly cropped. Which is, after seeing just the regular widescreen version of the movie, it's so awkward to go back and watch the cropped 4:3 footage because you're missing so much. But I think that just adds to the charm of it. It just reminds me of when I first saw that movie on TV. It's an interesting alternate look into what could have been with Halloween 2, with, you know, the toned down gore, toned down violence, and kind of more character development, while giving you some weird ass entertaining edits that makes for a fun time. So yeah, that's the Halloween 2 TV cuts. Definitely an interesting piece of nostalgia. And yeah, that's about it for now. And until next time, I'll talk to you guys later.